Damron-Brown.
Good morning, San Joaquin, and welcome. Yes, we're here today with Tales and Tips, and I'm so honored to have with me the director for the Stockton Shelter for the Homeless, Jolyn McMillian. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm so excited that you're here, and we're going to talk about everything related to homelessness in San Joaquin County and specifically Stockton, where your facility is located. And we'll talk about all the amazing things that you are doing and your solutions to the issue. Let's talk about where is Stockton Shelter for the Homeless and how long have you been a part of that amazing organization?
So the Stockton Shelter for the Homeless is technically located at 411 South Harrison Street. We also have a facility that faces Church Street. It's co-located next to St. Mary's Dining Hall, no longer Dining Hall, I guess. And I started last September, so I'm still in my first year with the agency right now. I come from a variety of social services background. I've done foster care for 20 years, mental health and behavioral health programs, and I cut my teeth doing transitional housing for foster care, and that's kind of where I became involved in the homeless situation, particularly for transitional age youth leaving the foster care system. So that's how I landed here in San Joaquin County, and the initial interest I gained in really what is going on in the homeless population and the homelessness issue in San Joaquin County.
And it's exciting to me that you're here because you have such a strong background in dealing with issues connected with homelessness. And I think that's important, especially when our county is facing somewhat of a crisis. I know you were part of the recent point in time count, and the numbers have doubled in our count. And I will say, as a member of the Continuum of Care, and you're on there also, that this year's count was amazing in how many participants that we had and the different sectors. Not only did we have organizations that are working with the homeless, but we had sheriffs and we had police and we had counts done in areas where we haven't tackled before, such as Ripon. And it was a huge integrated effort. How did you feel about the count?
Actually, it was my first count, so it was important to me to become involved and really walk the streets. My understanding was it was a 400% increase for volunteers coming forward to do the count. And so the count is important because it's what generates funding for our city and county. And so it was really important to get as accurate a count as we could. And I really feel like the city and the county were able to do that.
And you're never going to be able to, unfortunately, count everyone because of how widespread our county is and where people might be that we're not aware of. But it was amazing to me, and you're right, and we should give a shout out to everyone that volunteered. I know that several people from United Way, and I serve on that board, were there. And Kristen, I just want to give you a shout out for spearheading that. All of City Council was there, and so many different organizations. And just like you said, not only does it affect the funding for this issue, but it helps to give direction, because you can't create guidance and you can't create things in motion when you don't know what you're dealing with.
Correct. So, we have in the Stockton city limits, we have about 1,000 still unsheltered here, and that means that they're actively living on the streets. At the shelter, our capacity and what we're exceeding capacity every day. We're sheltering almost double capacity. We're in overflow. It's pretty dire. So we are actively on the streets looking for help and solutions. And part of it is we're the front end of homelessness. We're the shelter, but we're having a housing crisis on the back end, and that's really what's driving the bulk of this homelessness. People think that people see the face of homelessness as a lot of the men that have the mental health issues and drug addiction issues on the street. But the face of homeless in this county, let me be clear, is the working poor. That's who is struggling. Those are the people who are coming to our shelter. Every day I have 2-parent families coming in seeking services. It's no longer the single woman with multiple children. The face of homelessness is poor working families who have jobs, who have families, who at one time had housing and they've fallen out of housing because of the cost of housing that has occurred in San Joaquin County in the past couple years. So we have had to not only start at the front end, but we've had to start becoming a solution on the back end as well. And so one of the things that we're doing that maybe the larger community isn't really aware of as much as the people in the continuum of care are aware of, is we are partnering with STAND, the Housing Authority, and Central Valley Low Income Housing to do a permanent housing project. We have the funding. We have bought our first 5 lots.
Yay!
Yes, it's really, we're
That's
really
huge.
excited about it. We're looking at not traditional brick and mortar structures to keep the costs down so that we can build as much affordable, permanent supportive housing as we can, with the goal of having our clients and our residents that are staying at the shelter move into that housing where we can continue to support them. So once they're in their permanent housing location, they will not fall out of housing again. And so it's one of the stronger partnerships and really exciting in this county because I don't think it's been done here in the past. And so as partners, we're all really, really excited to be able to not only be dealing with the front end, but being really close to solutions to help these families on the back end of the continuum as well.
And that's amazing. And I'm really glad that you explained that, because I talk to people every day that tell me that we don't have a homelessness crisis. We have a drug and alcohol, especially drug addiction crisis. And there's no denying that drug addiction is a big part of people that are on the street. But homelessness has so many different faces. Mm-hmm. And if this was something that could be easily solved, it wouldn't be growing at the rate that it is, and it wouldn't be nationwide.
That's correct. And I think that it's to our own peril that we just look at it as a drug and alcohol issue. There's a lot of self-medicating because of the abject hopelessness from people who have fallen into homelessness. And so I think we have to look at that is it the chicken or the egg sometimes coming first? And for us, we just got to find solutions.
Yes.
That's what it is. And it might be some alcohol or some drug or some behavioral health or mental health issues, but really it's housing. There's no affordable housing. There's less than a 1% vacancy rate in this county for housing. And what that means is there's basically a house or a location is open enough for them to clean it and rent it to somebody new, and then it's unvacant again. And so there's really no housing surplus at all. So we're getting people into the shelter and there's no place to put them. And because the rents are getting so high, nobody wants to do supplemental vouchers and things like that help support financially our more struggling families in the county. There's no incentive right now. And so we're really struggling with that because what used to be affordable housing is gone now, and they're charging full rents for those locations. And
not only that, but I recently learned about something called porting, where we might have someone that's homeless from the Bay Area and their voucher is worth more. And if they've had a voucher for over a year, they can come and use that voucher here, and they're going to be able to pay more for housing than someone from our area that has a voucher.
And that further escalates the crisis for the families here because, again, the Bay Area housing push is what's caused the rents and the housing to be so expensive here. And so what you see as the struggle continues, that being co-located next to the Bay Area like we are a major destination for families that can't afford to live in the Bay Area, and they bring their Bay Area funding and their Bay Area salaries into our community, hence the housing crisis. And that's why we can't just consider it to be men with drug and alcohol issues. If this truly is a family housing crisis, and if it's this bad now, it's only going to get worse. At any given time, I have between 60 and 80 children at my shelter.
60 to 80.
Between 2 and 3 classrooms.
Wow.
I mean, when you look at it that way, it's almost 3 classrooms full of children at the shelter at any given time.
Wow.
And so it is a family struggle.
Wow.
And it's impacting children in our community.
Wow. And what is the capacity of your facility?
So on the family side, our capacity is we have 30 individual family rooms. Our capacity with regard to that is 152. Then we have 22 barrack-style rooms with beds. We have 2 barrack-style rooms with beds that can house up to 22 women. And then on our men's side, we have a men's side unit that can house up to 111 men. But we're actually, generally speaking, we're running no less than 170 men year-round right now, because and even in the summertime. So when you're sheltering, during the winter, we were sheltering at times over 230 men. And so the fact that it hasn't dropped as much as it normally would this summer, that we're still sheltering 170. And I have to tell you, every week I see, or I'm introduced to, another man who has lost, and his first day of homelessness is at our shelter. And so they're still coming, and it's not getting better, and it's not getting better on our family side.
And I was actually talking to a sheriff yesterday who's on the board with me for United Way, Matt Lindsay, and he was saying that he might find someone on the street that wants help and wants services, but frequently your organization is full, other places are full, and there's nowhere to send that person, which is sad to me, because there are people out there that want help and can't get help.
And that's absolutely correct. And that's actually a decent segue into what are we doing? And that gets me talking about, well, there's a lot of things going on in the community. Because we are the largest shelter in Northern California, we are considered the leaders in sheltering the lowest barrier population of the greatest need. And so we are in talks and in communications with both the city and the county on how we can all work together to bring more shelter beds into the community, while always being mindful of the humanity. That we're working with families and children, and that we're working with people, right? And we're working with men who, a lot of people struggle with who they are and what they're about. But at the end of the day, so many of those men have been so traumatized in their histories, and they have no place to go and no outlet for it and nobody to talk to, that it becomes, after a lifelong of living that way, it becomes mental health issues, and it becomes addiction issues. And so it's important for, I think, our community to remember that although it's hard to look at them and where they're at now, where they came from is a place of significant damage and pain. And we need to remember that when we're treating them, that they need to be treated with dignity and respect and as humans, because they are. And we don't know what their capacity is until we begin to work with them to find their capacities. And so part of the reason that I'm here and that I'm excited to be here is I'm a social worker. I'm a business person, but I'm also a social worker. And I believe in programming. I believe that we can make our people at the shelter who are struggling better. I think that there are men that we can get employed there, but they haven't had the opportunities to do that. And so part of my role in the next year is going to be, how can I shepherd in more of those opportunities? How can I find deeper touch case management for our men, which I'm really close to getting.
Awesome.
So I'm super excited about that, because a year ago at our major fundraiser, I stood up and said, I want my first month on the job, I stood up and said, I want to case manage men. And by the time we do our major fundraiser this October, I will have a case manager for those men. And we will be working on really increasing their self-worth, their personal self-worth, their self-esteem, because that's what it takes to get them off drugs and to get them employed. And that's our goal. And so we're going to do it.
So what about the group of people that say that they don't want help? How do you feel we can work with those people? How can we help to make them want help? Do you think that's possible?
So I think it's a variety of things. I think that we have to catch them at the window that they want help. And I think that's important. I think that sometimes, one is, we've talked about, pets are a big issue on the streets. Mm-hmm. We have quite a few of our men and women and a few families that won't come off the streets because their pets are important to them, and rightfully so. It's a comfort. It's a friend. It's somebody that cares about that person unconditionally.
Protection too.
Absolutely. Protection as well. And so as an agency, we are currently looking into lowering our barriers even more.
Yay.
I know. And so I am looking into providing some sort of opportunity for a pet shelter. You and I have talked about it. a Senate bill just was approved, the SB 258, which is giving opportunities for funding and grants for low barrier shelters to provide these kinds of pet services.
Awesome.
And so we're looking into that right now. That will be, as we look to increase capacity, that will be a major component of our increasing capacity, because there is no place to put pets in this county for our men and women off the streets. And in order to get, I think I saw in the point of time count, 30% of the people on the streets have pets.
At least.
So we could at least have an opportunity to pull 30% more people off the streets by just opening a pet housing. And it's not to keep the pets in there all day long, but while they're sheltering with us at night, that there's a safe place to put their pets, that we have opportunities for the pets to be properly fed and have some health care, so that we know those pets are in good health and we're not, getting in trouble with anybody. So previously we hadn't done it because the cost to insure that facility is going to be prohibitive. But with what's going on now, I'm pretty confident I'm going to get this done. It's become one of my major goals in lowering barriers, is to get the pets homes.
And I was really excited when you approached me with that, because it's so innovative and no one's doing it. And when I was going out and feeding dogs on a weekly basis, I would say it's even more than 30%. And not only is it one pet, but it's 2 and 3, frequently pit bulls, chihuahuas were mostly what I saw. And even with my vaccine clinics, I'm still seeing that people are coming with multiple pets. And just like you said, it's a source of love. It's a source of warmth and protection. And when someone's lost everything in their whole world, this is something that they can hold on to, and the pets become more and more increasingly like family to them. And I found that people are willing to forego having food for themselves if it means providing food for their pets.
Absolutely. And so part of treating our clients and treating the people in this community as humans is attending to those needs of their family. And so pets is a vital piece of that. And so we're really looking forward. I've got some plans in mind. I'm looking at funding sources. I'm looking at insurance sources, because that's really the largest barrier, is the prohibitive cost of insurance for some of those more aggressive dogs that we will find high numbers of on the streets.
And I sent you some information, because the closest facility that I know of is in Modesto, the Haven. That's a women's abuse facility, and they did this a couple years ago on a smaller scale than you want to. But I was so excited, and I believe that you're going to make this happen, and I'm happy to help you however I can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that I am a get done kind of person once the ball gets rolling, and so I'm really looking forward to that opportunity and seeing how that unfolds. I think it'll be a really good thing for the county.
I think it'll be awesome. So let's go back and just focus more on what your facility right now is able to do for people. You're providing shelter, you're providing clothing.
We provide some clothing, but we really rely on St. Mary's, who's co-located with us, for the bulk of the feeding and the bulk of the clothing. They also have their hygiene center. So a lot of our men who are sheltering with us, we do have shower facilities in our men's program, but a lot of the men who shelter with us prefer to use the hygiene center at St. Mary's, and then there's a clothing store there that they also use. At our shelter, we currently have a veterans program that shelters on site with up to 10 veterans, and we work with them while they have medical issues, so that until they can resolve those medical issues, to find housing. So we're working with them. They get monthly support groups, and they have a dedicated case manager to them. And
awesome.
so we're really looking at assisting, that moonshot that they were talking about a couple weeks ago at the joint Board of Supervisors and City Council meeting is we're part of that continuum as well. And so we're kind of the low end, housing first, low barrier entry point for the veterans as they move through the continuum of the Veterans Healthcare Program around here. So that's one of the programs we do. The other thing is, we didn't have a lot for our children prior to my coming here, and because I'm a social worker, that's important to me. And
Our future
correct,
generation.
Correct. And I always think it's never the children's fault. Homelessness is not the child's fault. And so one of the things that I started talking about fairly early on was I'd like to do a summer camp for our kids. So I am super proud to say that with the help of several board members, Helen Crane being a key facilitator of this, working with the homeless TLC schools, we were funded to do.
TLC is amazing.
They are amazing.
Give them a shout out.
That's why I'm giving them a shout out, because they gave us a small grant and they turned it around very quickly. And so next week's our last week because school's starting back up, but we ran a kids camp for 2 days a week.
Wow.
All summer long this summer. And that was the first ever. And so we're actually starting to fund seek to run it 5 days a week next week or next summer, 5 hours a day. What I'm learning is that for children that there's something called learning loss for children, and children that are in our poorer economic areas have learning loss in the summer because they don't have enrichment like they do throughout the school year. And so one of our goals for our children at the shelter is so that they don't have learning loss. And in fact, not only do they maintain their learning, but there's enrichment during the summer activities so that they have some learning gain in the summer.
Awesome.
And so this year it was more, let's try it out, get it going, see how it works. But next year I would really like to implement a full-bodied summer camp for our children. And it allows our families to work. It allows our families to go and do their daily appointments and get their business taken care of without having to have their children with them.
That's awesome.
So
and it gives the kids an experience just like every kid that's out there that might have the opportunity to be at summer camp.
That's exactly right. So this summer, every Wednesday, they got a pizza party. And so and those kinds of things are important because they should just be kids. Mm-hmm. They should just have to worry about being a child. They shouldn't have to worry about being homeless and where their next meal is going to come from. And so that's an important value at the shelter that we are really starting to take on, and that is our children do not pay for homelessness.
Awesome. And then let's take that further. So now what happens to these kids that school is starting?
So I will say I'm going to give a shout out to my Rotary group, North Stockton Rotary.
Woohoo!
They're coming tonight,
awesome.
And they're
Judy Lovett.
Yes, our previous district
governor.
Yes, thank you. They're coming tonight to provide backpacks and school supplies for all the children at the shelter.
Beautiful.
So we're super excited about that because that really is a burden off the shelter and the families. The backpacks will be filled with age-appropriate school supplies so that the younger kids get what they need and the older kids get what they need. We currently have children at the shelter literally 2 weeks old to 18 years old. So when I say we run the gamut, everything at the shelter on the family side.
And Rick is your current president, is that right?
No, Emily Ballas is our current president.
Okay.
She is awesome. She's over at the Mary Graham Foundation right now, doing my second love, which is foster care work. So I'm super excited that she's over there, and she's done heroes work for the agency.
And that transition just happened. She posted it, I think, on Facebook.
Yes,
yesterday.
she did. So
shout
we're
out to
super
her
excited.
Too. That's
yes,
awesome.
and so
it's a win-win.
It was a win-win, and she was able, I think, to give some time to the critical service to the Stockton Shelter between her job now and the first of the year, and really doing some legwork in finding affordable ways for us to increase our capacity. Awesome. And so I have to give a shout out to Emily for that, because she really brought forth a plan that is on the table, and we're actively looking, and fingers crossed will be funded soon.
Awesome.
And so, we've got some things in the works, but we're looking at doubling our capacity right now and staying co-located with St. Mary's. So fingers crossed that everything lines up, and
I have a feeling it will.
And we can get it done. But it's, it's not one person, it's not one agency. It really is everyone coming together to try to find solutions, short-term and long-term solutions. Short-term to get the people off the streets, and long-term because we need housing.
And not only housing, but we need people to have a path to where they're in a position that they could be in housing, where they're stable and self-supporting. And
so that's one of the interesting things that people probably don't know about our shelter. On the family side, we actually have a savings requirement. So the family side is a working we call it the working side of the shelter. We expect our families to be employed if they can at all possible. And sometimes they can't. Sometimes there are disabilities. But we do have a very strict savings requirement. And so you're going to be on the shorter term of sheltering if you're not willing to buckle down and put that savings in. When our families leave the shelter, they have enough money for their first month's rent and a deposit and some extra in addition to that, because when they leave us, we don't want them to have to come back. So we want to make sure that they're
successful.
That's right. So we want to make sure they're saving enough before they leave us that they can get out and get back on their feet again and maintain their housing. And so that's a little known fact that we actually have a very rigorous savings requirement, and it works.
That's awesome. And to me, what I love about that is people complain they don't want to see people getting a free ride. And if they're doing what you're having in place, they're not getting a free ride and they're vested in their own success.
Really what they're being given an opportunity to do is to live someplace that's free of charge, where the community supports, so that they can save the money they need to save as quickly as they can save it. Now, I've got a lot of residents with money and no place to go right now because of the housing issue. And so hence the reason we're at the back end of the continuum too. But it is important for people to know when families leave my shelter, they're leaving in a mostly self-sufficient way, and they're leaving with a nest egg that they themselves have saved. We're not providing it for them. And I think that goes a long way to teach their children discipline and savings and those kinds of things. So I think it's an important model for role modeling and for getting families out of a crisis and teaching them and giving them the skills to stay out of that crisis. So we do literacy. We have a Central Valley Community Bank comes in. Tony Taboda has her staff coming in.
Awesome.
Yes, and so we're working actively with the families on financial literacy. We also have Child Abuse Prevention Council, Parent Cafe come in to help our families with parenting. And so, we do have quite a few supports in for our families.
Awesome. And what happens, how do you handle if someone does have drug addiction or some other type of addiction?
So our barrier is a low barrier shelter, which means we don't drug test. You don't have to test clean to come into even our family shelter. Which is a bit of a struggle, and a lot of people don't like to hear that. But the truth of the matter is there are a lot of families in our community who are self-medicating that are functioning just fine. And so it's not for us to judge that. Our role is to get them up on their feet and functioning whatever their issues are. And if we can diminish those issues, we're going to diminish those issues. If we can give them a reason or an opportunity to not use, then we're going to do everything we can to do that, because that's how they fulfill who they're meant to be, is to get off the drugs and get clean and really self-actualize.
And if they want help with that, if they want a program, what do you connect them to?
So it depends, but we can go to NAAA, community medical centers. We've sent clients there. On our men's side, our male employees, or the men that work on our men's side, are really good at identifying the windows where one of our men who are sheltering there wants sobriety, and we actually work very closely with the other shelters, because when those windows open, we contact the other shelters, the sober shelters, and get them squirreled away into those. And so that's like kind of where we go to for the next step for those people who are struggling with addictions. But we're looking at really trying to, in the next year or two, build a full-service navigation center out where we are.
Awesome.
And so part of that means a lot of co-location of services. So my hope is that we will, and we're at the very beginning stages of this, just talk, but we're really looking in the next year or two to get as many services as we can co-located out at the shelter and St. Mary's, who has their own array of services, including medical and dental and case management. They do a lot more besides food. Yeah. And so that's what's...
I do my vaccine clinic.
Yes, you do. And so that's one of the things that is amazing for us, is that on our corner, we can provide a really rich, deep touch service with coordinating both of our agencies. And so we are working closely with St. Mary's to meet the needs currently, and we see that partnership hopefully deepening in the future.
And I think that's awesome. And to me, what you just said, not only partnering with St. Mary's, but other facilities, is that every organization has different roles that they're playing, and they're able to be a component of this, but it's so complicated. There is no one just easy, simple solution.
And there really isn't. So for our families, sometimes a major barrier is they have to go to 5 or 6 places. So if we can bring those services to one place, and they can stop in a day, stop through and get at least 3 or 4 of those services in one stop, then that's the right thing to do, because it's more convenient. They're more inclined to do it. And so once again, it lowers barriers. And that's what we want. We want the barriers as low as we can get them, so that we can bring in and help as many people as we can come to some self-sufficiency, which is really the end goal of all this. It's not just slapping a Band-Aid out and sending people back out onto the streets with no additional help. It's really helping people reach self-sufficiency, whatever that looks like for each person. And so that's really the goal of our shelter, is to do that.
So how long are people with you on average?
Wow. So if they're just coming in for crisis, and so the crisis looks like, if they're not willing to save and really work our program, they can have 30 days, and then we do month exceptions after that. But really what we're looking at is families are staying at what historically had been the crisis shelter, sometimes 6 months to a year.
Wow.
So, and we don't exit families. If they're following the rules and they're doing the saving that they need to do, you know, sometimes if you're on disability, it takes a long time to save up the money, and then you've got to wait for housing that you can afford to pay the rent on every month. Disability pays less than $1,000 a month. And when the average rent here is $1,500, they're priced out or higher. There's no place for them to go. And so we are seeing these longer stays, and we're allowing them because that's the right thing to do. They're doing what they need to do. And that's what prompted us again to go back into the continuum and find permanent housing. The housing that we're building, the permanent housing, is going to be a feeder straight from our shelter into that permanent housing. So it's not going to be just apply and get into that housing. That housing is for shelter families. And so that's the key to that, is we are going to have our own method to put families into permanent housing.
So they won't get priced out from someone from another area.
No, they won't.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they won't be priced out. These units are going to be permanently affordable units for families.
Wonderful.
For Central Valley, low income, and for the shelter. So it's going to be those are the feeder agencies that will feed into this specific housing project.
And when do you anticipate that housing will be available?
We're still looking at housing models, but we're coming. It's not going to be traditional brick and mortar. It takes too long to bring that stuff up. So we're looking at modular and manufactured different styles right now. So I don't want to give a timeline. Peter Ragsdale from Housing Authority.
Shout out to Pete. He's awesome.
Yes, he is really the information keeper on that. And so I would defer all of those questions to Peter.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And let's go back, and you mentioned if clients are following the rules that they can stay. Why don't we talk about, you mentioned one of the ground rules is they have to be saving for housing. What are some of your other ground rules that they have to abide by?
We're in the process of trying to lower those barriers anymore. So there are rules about doing chores, because it is your home, and so everyone pitches in and does chores. But really, we have 4 key rules, and that is, although we're a low barrier shelter and not a sober shelter, there's no drugs or alcohol or firearms or weapons of any kind allowed on the campus, and so that's a pretty firm rule. If you're threatening violence of any kind, will get you exited. Trying to think of, there's 4 of them, and they're property destruction, intentful property destruction. We have, the facilities, heavy use on our facilities. And so we have to be mindful about, I have 2 full-time maintenance men at the site that do nothing. Yes, they are busy all the time. And so it's really intentional property destruction. And the 4th one I can't even think of off the top of my head, but they're really more big ticket items. And then there are some day-to-day structures. So our families are generally gone from the shelter from 9 to 3. That's the time when they can do their work. The kids are in school. But when at 3:00, when the bulk of the kids come out of the schools, the families can come back into the shelter, and then they run their evening programs. If there are chores that need to be done, they start their chores. They do their evening meals. It's a homework time for children. And then one thing that's important to us is lights out always at 10. And we believe you should be getting 8 hours of sleep. So from 10 to 6, those are our quiet times. Families need sleep. We all need sleep. And I think that those of us who have operated on a little sleep for long periods of time, once we get that sleep, we recognize, wow, we function a lot better when we're getting the sleep that we need. And so that's an important piece for families when they're coming off the streets and they've had to keep one eye open for safety issues. Their need to sleep and get rested, because there's a lot of work they got to do to get out of the shelter. And so that's an important piece too.
And at night, you have gates that you
So at night,
lock?
our gates do close every night at 9 p.m. and they open again at 6 a.m. If we've got families that are working, there's a mechanism to trigger the gate opening through contacting the shelter. And we have a fire and ambulance visit regularly, because we have medical needs when our men come off the street in the evenings. Mm-hmm. A lot of men come off the street with a lot of not significant medical needs, but they're becoming significant because they're untreated medical needs. And so we do a lot of high-end medical care. I'm talking with the hospitals right now on how we can work with them so that an ambulance is not leaving our shelter almost every single night and accessing the most expensive form of medical care in the county. And so I am working with the hospitals to find a solution to that hopefully will cost a lot less.
That's a win-win
It
for
is
everyone.
That's what I agree with that. So I think that us finding a solution to that is going to be a huge cost saver for the county as a whole.
And do you track your success rate? Do you know what percentage of people that leave your facility are able to stay off the streets?
So it's a difficult tracking because we don't always have control about when people are leaving, how they're leaving, or where they're going. And so sometimes they don't tell us where they're going, but we do input into the national HMIS system, which is the homelessness database system, and that tracks homelessness in the country. And so if there is something forwarding there, we do enter that in. If we hear something, we do update it. But there's really no strong mechanism to track unless they stay in their housing for 2 years. And so we are looking at doing that because we need some analytics on that for the future. And so I think what you'll see in the next year is we'll start tracking that much more aggressively.
Would be awesome.
Yeah,
it would be really fascinating. And I was going to ask you, do people come back? People that have left, are you seeing them come back periodically?
Yes, and we actually employ some of them. So we do, because who can understand the shelter experience and what it takes to come up from the very bottom and get into your own housing better than somebody that has done it. And so my veteran social worker and our lead and our other 2 social workers have all, if they didn't come through the shelter, they have all had some rough life experiences that have taught them what they need to do to be successful. And so we look to them to help our residents come through for success.
And I think that's huge. And many facilities do that. And just like you said, they understand what people have gone through. And not only does it help them to communicate with clients, but it also helps clients to respect them because they understand.
Oh, look, I could talk until I'm blue in the face to some of our clients, but because I've never been there and I've never done that, it's all just talk, right? But when they're talking to their case manager and their case manager can look them in the eye and say, I know exactly how you feel because I've been there, that's a different situation. And that allows the families and the individuals to trust the case manager to provide the assistance that the family and the individual truly, truly needs to be successful.
It's like their special PhD, because it's a PhD from experience.
Well, look, I've got my master's, but everything I learned was not in school. Everything I know about what I do now, I learned on the job, on the streets, doing what I do every day. And so it is truth. They have their own PhDs, and they're of great value.
Definitely. And I respect that you appreciate that. And I just think it gives an edge to your facility because you can provide that.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I think it does. And I think that when people in the facility can see, hey, we do hire from within, it does impact their growth trajectory. Does that make sense? It impacts it in a positive way. Definitely. When they can look. And so
it's a role
that's what
model.
we're doing. Exactly.
It's
and that's what has to happen in every step of the way is people have to be role modeled from people who came through the fire before them.
Well, and not only that, but it gives them the ability to see, well, if they can do that, I can do that in the role model sense. But I also think it makes them feel better about themselves, because I'm sure that you have a lot of people going through your facility that feel like they're worthless, and they're learning that they're not, and they can do things, they can achieve things.
So a lot of people are in the struggle they're in because they do feel worthless. And so one of the things that we have to be mindful of always when we're working with our families and our individuals is that we have to do everything we can to increase self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Because when you increase the self-esteem, the self-confidence, and the self-worth, people are willing to do more, take on more, take action, find jobs. And so that is a key element is that therapeutic piece, right? Mm-hmm. Of teaching somebody that they have value when all of their lives they have been told they're worth nothing. It's not an easy process.
Not at all.
But it's a worthwhile process.
And to me, the fact that you're doing it with and turning people's lives around in the numbers that you're doing, it's phenomenal. So kudos to you.
Well, I've only been here a year, so what I need to say is kudos to my staff because they do the hero's work every day. I have a crew of dedicated staff that don't get paid a lot. They do it for the love of the people that they work with. They do it for the little rewards they get every day when a client says thank you, when a client comes back and visits and say, I'm still in my house. And it happens. We do get those.
Awesome.
So,
can we name your staff? Can we give shout outs?
So I've got JoJo Rimmer, who is my new, as of April, shelter manager, and she has really been doing heroes work in on the family side. And I've got Ralph Gage, who takes the lead on my day program, and Henry, and I can't believe I'm blanking on Henry's last name. He's so important.
It's all good. We'll just call him
everyone
Henry
knows Henry. And so Henry works on the men's shelter, and they've been there for years and years, and their value is what we do.
Awesome.
Working with the people, creating the humanity that is so sometimes missing, is they've never, even in 20 years of working at the shelter, never lost sight of the importance of the humanity of our men.
And you mentioned someone on your board earlier, so we should give it a shout out to your board. And how about some volunteers as well?
So, well, we've got actually a whole crew of volunteers. We do a lot of work with AWP. We do a lot of work with Ready to Work. So awesome. I think I'd like to shout out particularly John Mendelssohn's Ready to Work program, because he's putting men that are leaving jails to work that would be at my shelter if it weren't for that program. And so they actually provide quite a bit of help around the grounds, because we shelter for what we do for about $7 a night per head.
Wow.
So we're understaffed. We have no grounds. We have no real grounds maintenance. You wonder why the shelter looks the way it does sometimes. It does get hard use, but we put what money we have always put into our people. And when I say people, I mean our residents and the people who shelter with us. And so, we need grounds help, because you've been out there. We have a huge amount of grounds. Yes. And so we had a couple of gentlemen come in last week, just come in and say, we want to volunteer. I didn't even catch their names. I didn't get to do anything but just thank them as I walked on campus. And they trimmed and they weed whacked a bunch of the grass and the things that we needed for fire prevention. So it really is just a lot of people that come in regularly because they feel the call to help. And so there's a lot of names I can't name because I don't know who they are. They just come in by the hundreds, and we're so grateful for that.
So let's lead off with that, with how can the community help you?
Well, the community can always help with funding, because we need funding. We're always looking to do little things. Big secret is every Friday our kids get ice cream from the ice cream truck. So if you want to help give pay for kids getting ice cream from the ice cream truck. That's a way to help. Coming in and volunteering, we have church groups come in and volunteering. In fact, while we're doing this interview, a church group is touring the shelter, and we're hoping that they can find some things to do for us. But there's always things to be done. Painting, landscape. We just need all the help we can get every day, and we're so grateful for it. And so are our residents.
How about supplies?
So I did an estimate. We spent $22,000 last year on toilet paper. But really what we're looking for is coffee. Coffee donations is a big thing, so that we give our men on the men's side free coffee, and so they don't get a lot of come-ups. And so that's something that we're looking for, because we can't afford to fund it ourselves. We go through quite a bit of coffee on the men's side, and so our board is working, and I've got my development director is working on finding coffee sources. But just tins of coffee is a big donation item that we could use at the shelter, and creamer, dry creamer, sugar, and anything that goes with that coffee, it would be good. Cups, absolutely. Time is always good. You know, if you've got, we've got the weed whacker, if you've got some time.
All right.
You know, basic repairs, anything. Just come and ask, and we'll find something.
So and that's perfect. How does someone connect with you? What's your website, facility phone number? Let's repeat the address. Are you on Facebook?
So we are on Facebook, Stockton Shelter for the Homeless. We do have a website, Stockton Shelter for www.StocktonShelter for the Homeless.
.org or .com?
It's .org. And so we're working on those sites right now. In all the busyness that's been going on, we kind of fell behind on those sites, but we're actively working to make them current again. I think you'll find our website is current, except for my picture and comment.
All right.
And then our phone number is area code 209-465-3612, and that will get you to the main line, and you can ask for whoever you want there. And if you want to talk to somebody about donating time, having a tour, they'll guide you from that number to where you need to go.
Awesome. Excellent. And let's talk about your fundraiser. You have an annual fundraiser that I've been to several times. It's amazing. Let's talk about it and when it is.
So we have our Festival of International Cuisine. It is going to be this year on October 12th. We are currently taking sponsors. If you're interested in sponsoring a table, go ahead and call the shelter, and we'll get you directed to the correct people. We're looking for raffle donations and auction items to auction off if you're interested in or have a donation you'd like to provide. And you can also buy tickets online, but it is going to be October 12th. It's our only fundraiser of the year this year. And so we're hoping to make it a really big one.
Location?
The location is at Presentation Church, right off of March Lane. And I believe it will start at 6. We have it up on our website right now. So if you want more information, you can go to our website.
Do you know a ticket price yet?
The ticket price is going to be $100 per person. Okay. And that's pretty much what we do. You know, it's our standard price, but there'll be raffle items, auction items. We'll have food from between 20 and 30 different restaurants. So if you want to try a little food from here and a little food from there, this is the place to do it. So you can it's the international food. So we're all over.
And it's amazing. And just like what Jolyn said, you can have food from so many different cultures. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great event. And the raffle items are amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's just really fun. And it helps to support a facility that's doing so much on the front lines of homelessness in our community.
Thank you, Julie.
Anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't touched on?
No, but I really would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to getting our word out about what is going on at the shelter and all the new and positive changes, in addition to the help that we're needing. So thank you.
Yes, and hopefully some people that are watching or listening will come out and volunteer or donate to you. And it's exciting to me. I mean, it's a scary time when you see in the paper that there's another fire that's mm-hmm. been started by homeless, mm-hmm. or you see that there's E. coli in the water, mm-hmm. and there is concern that this is a public health issue with different diseases on the street. But at the same time, I'm excited that facilities like yourself and Gospel Center Rescue Mission mm-hmm. and others are hugely stepping up to really try and meet the need of this issue, so that we can make a difference not only in the lives of these people, but help our community.
Thank you. And I would like to say that we're private nonprofits, and so we're doing as much as we can with what we have. And the more we have, the more we can do. And we can do it for a song.
And we should step back and add to that, because you said $7 a night, and I was amazed to hear how you're able to do so much with so little. How much of your support comes from government, either national or state, and how much of it is you out there fundraising?
So we have several contracts with the county for some behavioral health services. We have helping opportunities for people with AIDS and HIV. Those are separate. That program is a separately funded program that actually is not on the shelter side at all. So we do receive some funding from the county. We receive HUD funding through the pass-throughs, normally from the city and the county, for emergency solutions grant, and CDBG funding, community development block grants. And so we receive support from the city and the county through that. We have our major fundraiser, and we take in, we always are doing development, grant writing. And so we're probably on shelter grounds, our programs are probably 80% privately funded or moving through HUD funding, I would say.
So the majority of it is your organization out there working to raise funds. It's not just given to you.
No, that's correct. And so we want to be a part of the solution, but we can only be as much as we can afford. and you know, we've really stretched our resources and limits to as far as we can stretch them in helping as many people as we can. And so we need more facility. We need more funding for operation, for staffing, and as those come in, and I am actually fairly confident that in the upcoming work with the city and the county that there will be opportunity for us to get more people off the streets, lower our barriers, and do all the things that we've talked about here today.
Awesome. But as you have more people, then you have more requirements for funding, more staff and supplies and things like that.
That's
it goes hand in hand. Two more things I just want to ask you on. You had mentioned the city-county meeting that happened not too long ago, and tents were brought up. And I'm interested to hear your perspective on the large tents, and if you feel that that's something that could fit at your facility or somewhere else, and how you see that as a part of the solutions.
Well, I don't at all agree with tents for families. Let me just be very clear about that. It's not a family-oriented solution, and because half of our homeless crisis is family, that is only, for me, a discussion that I would even engage in half the time. I think there are issues with tents: heating, cooling, flooding, fire hazards. Are their services co-located? What's the cleanliness, the garbage, the bathroom facilities, showering facilities? So I would have a whole question about that. At our shelter, we will not be doing any tent sheltering on grounds. That's not where we're at. We believe in roofs over the head kind of shelter. So I think it can work in some communities. I think that Modesto has done something that's very interesting. I'm very curious to see. I'm hearing they expect to close it down in December, right before winter sheltering. So I'm honestly really curious to see if they're going to close their homeless shelter down in December, or their homeless tent camp down in December, with everyone having found homes. And so until something, I'm going to hold my opinion on that until I see what happens in the longer term in Modesto, because I think that they're really modeling something there that may or may not work depending on what their end game is.
Okay. All right. And that's an interesting perspective. And it's so difficult because, as we said, this is growing and changing every day. How do you feel about when you and I went to the last Continuum of Care meeting, that someone spoke from Moron, who they have someone on their end that is helping coordinate with homeowners and apartment owners to rent to low income. And do you think that's something we could implement in Stockton or in the county?
I think that because I come from the foster care experience, I think that there's a lot of competition for those open bedrooms. And so I think that every community is going to be different, but we're competing with foster care for an open bedroom. We're competing with people off the streets for open bedrooms or open facilities. So for what's going on here, I don't think that that's going to be the answer. I think that Central Valley low-income housing already does a lot of that. And I think that it's not going to be the long-term solution we're looking at. However, he did talk about the fact that they identified by name their top 50 high-end users, and they worked really diligently to get those specific people services and get them off the street. I've seen that model in Solano County. Vacaville does something that's a bit similar to that. And so there is some success around that. I would be interested in seeing and hearing more about that, because if we can get the top 50 highest end users of services help, then that decreases the cost significantly of helping others.
Definitely. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you for mentioning that. The other thing that he said that was just jaw-dropping to me is that they estimate that per homeless person on the street, they're spending $60,000 a year in emergency services, whether it be fire or medical or what have you. And I think we could argue in our community that the potential is higher with the number of fires. There was just a bridge that was significantly damaged. People, unfortunately, are digging to the levees, and we have the E. coli issue. I think we could say that it's upwards of $70,000 per person. And to me, that just incentivizes more what you're doing and what other organizations are doing, and that we have to act sooner versus later.
I absolutely agree with you. We're at a critical moment right now. Action needs to be taken, or it's not going to look pretty in 2 years.
Well, and in Los Angeles, they have Skid Row, which I believe is at least 22 streets. It may be more. And they are definitely dealing with a public health issue. And I don't want to see that happen in our county.
And we're hitting critical mass on that right now. So I really think that in the next couple months, you'll see a lot of things coming together. I think that the public, I'm hoping, will hear some really good things. And I know the public has been asking for action for a long time. I've been at the meetings where we're hearing the ask, and I think that the time of action is here.
I agree. And I just want to thank you again for being here today. I just want to give you one more opportunity if there's anything that you want to add, and let's repeat all your contact information.
So our contact information is Stockton Shelter for the Homeless, 411 South Harrison Street. Our phone number is area code 209-465-3612. We're a 24-hour operating shelter, so somebody's is always answering the phones. We look for donations of, actually right now, children's clothing, shoes. Shoes are a big thing. Interview clothing for women and men in some larger sizes, and fresh fruit. Can I just put a shout out for fresh fruit? We need... Our kids don't get enough fresh fruit. So one of my big things this summer is to try and increase the amount of fresh fruit that the children have access to at the shelter.
Have you coordinated at all with the emergency food bank?
We have done some coordinating. I haven't met yet to do just that specific ask, but we actually discovered 3-4 fruit trees that were buried on the back of our property. And so, yes, we have apricots and donut peaches. And so we're introducing our kids to some of those fruits that they might not get to see normally.
Great. Awesome. And we should connect you to Mary also.
Yes, I've met Mary. She's busy right now. So
we're all busy. We're all doing everything we can, which is amazing. And I just want to thank you for taking the time, because I know you're extremely busy to come out today and talk with us.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, I'm going to sign off. I am the voice of San Joaquin. You are the voice of San Joaquin. We are the voice of San Joaquin. Let's make it a great day.